Welcome to the Love Local Chicagoland Podcast. Here we invite people and nonprofits from our local communities to share their stories and their voices. Through amplifying their message, we share their genuine human experiences that connect us all. Our goal is to make our communities more than just a place to live, but instead a place to thrive. Tune in to hear what makes our community so special right here on the Love Local Chicagoland Podcast.
What's going on, friends? Jason here with the Love Local Chicagoland Podcast, where we like to tell stories about things that are happening in our community to be able to bring spotlights on things that matter. My friends, we're here today for episode 6 of the Love Local Chicagoland Podcast with Good Neighbors Network. They are some passionate women that you're about to find out that decided when COVID hit to just do some good in their community and to love on their neighbors. And now they're sitting here 3 years later or so, and now they're becoming a 501(c)(3), and they're continuing to do great work and love it on the community. So excited to introduce them. First person introduced is Yeulanda. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely my pleasure, and I look forward to this conversation, getting to know you more throughout this process. The next person I'm going to introduce is Miss Rachael Hooker, which is a friend of mine as well, and also the board president for Good Neighbors Network.
Yes, we've known each other a long time, and I love what, we've been following what you're doing here at Love Local, but this is my first time here. Thanks so much for having me.
This is exciting.
Super excited.
This is exciting. I'm nervous because it's you. You know stories about me, like my family know about me. Like you can make this really awkward really quick.
I cannot wait to hear those.
But we'll keep those stories and we'll edit those out for my safety. But anyway, I am humbled to be here today to be able to introduce you both. Rachael, I heard first about the Good Neighbors Network in the beginning of COVID when world was crazy and you had this vision, but you were following and working with your friend that had this vision to love on the community. Now we're 3 years later. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I remember us talking on the phone, like when the schools were about to shut down and like, oh my gosh, what is about to happen? And you being kind of Palatine based, maybe in Arlington Heights, and just kind of thinking what we might do. And Yeulanda and I have been having some conversations in and around like the 11th, 12th, 13th is when it shut down, right? Yeah. And we were thinking and dreaming and kind of comparing notes with you.
Trying to figure it out. So basically on March 13th, 2020, that's the day that they told us that schools were going to shut down for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. That's it. We're gonna go back to school and everything's gonna be great. But at that time, my first thought when they sent that email, I literally was just like, what are the kids going to do that receive free lunch at school? Because I know firsthand that they count on that meal and the families count on that meal during the day. And, it's just little things, like little things that you can do to kind of make somebody's life, a little easier. I thought about the parents. I thought about the kids. So I, without thinking of how I was going to do this, kind of put out a post just to my kids' school. So Rachel and our kids go to the same school. And I literally put out a post that says, I'm collecting snacks on my front porch. There's a bin out there for the kids receiving free and reduced lunch. And that was it. So the next day, within 12 hours or something, Rachael literally started a Facebook page called Good Neighbors Network. Neighbors Helping Neighbors in Arlington Heights. So it was Neighbors Helping Neighbors. And it ended up being a landing point for, these types of things. And her first post, we kind of just in tandem, her first post for Neighbors Helping Neighbors just said, like, there's a lot of good going on in the community. Let's try to connect it all. And that was how that got started. And she was doing that based on the Palatine page. There's a page in Palatine.
Yeah, I think all of us, it was so new. And I think we were talking about, first of all, we didn't believe it was going to be 2 weeks. And this idea that the government institutions and nonprofits and our school districts, but the federal, state, local governments, they're not very nimble. And it was going to take them some time. And it was kind of like, we're cut from similar cloth, I would think, Southern girl, Midwest girl, but we were both raised by people that define family very generously and loosely. And we kind of had that like John Lewis moment of like, if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? So it was like, okay, well, let's just do this until the other things kick in.
Right.
And I think you were also sharing a lot of your story vulnerably with the community in ways that resonated with a lot of people out there that wanted to do something besides sit at home and wonder what the heck was going on.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. Like the world, I go back in that time, the world, like whether we knew it or not, I kind of get kicked in the teeth. There was so much changes. There were so many things happening there. The first thing you thought about wasn't really about yourself, but it was how can we help and how can we give back and making sure that kids are supported that don't get lunch, because now they're not going to be able to get lunch.
No, absolutely.
And you both just dove in.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty beautiful.
Yeah. So, I mean, it really was. It's one of those things that if I'm probably just sending out a post saying I'm collecting snacks, if I had thought about that for an hour or something like that, it was just like, oh, well, you don't have distribution. You don't know how to get these snacks to these kids that you want to collect.
Details, Yeulanda.
Like all of these things.
Let those work themselves
Right.
out. You know, sometimes too much planning just slows things down. Sometimes
it's
you
just
got to
like,
go.
it was literally a knee jerk. Like, I am doing this. This bin is out here. Go put snacks in it, people. And kind of just, again, my kids' school community. Just with my kids' school community in 3 days, like my house was full just from that one school.
It was insane.
It
what
was
started.
happening. So, you know, at this point we're starting to social distance. We're doing all of these things. So I made it extremely easy for people to just, you know, I think in that first post I said, if you're going out to the grocery store, just grab an extra box of granola bars. Like, that's all it takes. So that was a Friday. By Monday, I'm full. And by Monday, I need distribution. So I just got on the phone and started calling these school districts that didn't know what to do as well. So they were kind of figuring it out, but it was so new and, you know, different for everybody that it was just like, you know, all hands on deck. You've already done this, you know, whatever, bring them over here. Yeah. But we did that, you know, like I said, that was 3 days, but then like within a couple additional days, a week, I had enough for the entire district. And then it started, you know, kind of catching on from there. So I filled up my house several times over for 3 years before, you know,
that's a great story. To be able to give like that, like selflessly, like you all just went right in, and to give selflessly, there has to be a perspective or a why that got you there. And I would love to hear this from each of you, but what is that perspective or that why that was like, we're not going slow. We're going to figure this out. Yeah. We're going to build this thing in the air because the kids need it. Yeah. Like that's everything that I hear you saying, but what's that perspective and that why for each of you?
Like the absolute biggest thing for me is when they sent that message and I knew that those kids that received free lunch were going to be at home, it resonated with me because I was a kid who received free lunch. I grew up with a single mom. So my mom, my sister, and I, but I received free lunch from, you know, K through 12 in school. So I know what it means to, you know, be at home in the summer and like, you know, kids eat all the time. They eat when they're bored, eat when they're hungry, like whatever. But I also have 2 kids and they're literally, you know, eat me out of house and home. And I just had such empathy in that moment. And, you know, that's kind of how I go through life. But knowing that, you know, this mom is going to have to worry about how do I get something into this kid when, you know, knowing that you may already be living on the margins. You know, we live in a great, amazing area, but a lot of people move to this area so they can make a better life for their kids, for education. You know, the schools are amazing, but you live, you know, kind of, you know, it's hard. And, you know,
paycheck to paycheck, right?
Paycheck to paycheck. Right? Yeah. Okay. So
working numerous jobs, some people.
And just trying to, just doing that to try to get by and everything. So in that moment, without distribution and, you know, a thought, I was just like, these families need support. And when I reached out to the school, like the first district was District 25 that I reached out to, I said, I know, you know, for a fact that these families are going to suffer with just this little thing. And that little thing was just those snacks for those first, 2 weeks, because those are extras. Like, even if you do receive state benefits or anything like that, like buying granola bars or fruit snacks or anything like that, like I don't think about it nowadays or whatever, because I have the resources for my family. But I know that those are extras. Those were treats when I was a kid. I didn't get potato chips and like, all of those things or whatever, or crackers. And not that they're like the healthiest, best things or whatever, but it's what kids kind of need. And I wanted them to feel normal. I wanted them to like be at home and kind of feel normal and feel like a kid as everything was kind of going down the tubes. So with that, my mom, is amazing. And I'll say just a little bit about my amazing mom. When I was a kid,
We love moms.
right?
Yeah,
Mom stories.
Sure, yes.
Mom stories. My mom, volunteer and service was a requirement in my house, like from an early age. So even though we had need, we also had to give back. It was a part of our life. We always had to pay it forward. We, we'd get woken up on a Saturday morning super early to go volunteer somewhere, and I hated every minute of it. I hated it. What kid wants to wake up early on a Saturday or whatever?
None of them.
None of them. Like 0 kids everywhere. But going back to like that first day, that first post, and everything like that, like I've lived my life and made my kids see all these different things. But I was just like, there it is. It's that I've lived this life. And I know that this community can come together to support other families at this time. So, yeah.
So you led the way.
So I jumped in.
Keep everything with them. They
Yeah.
can.
So
I love when people take their perspective. It's me, like people ask, like, what is Love Local? I'm like, well, Love Local is like people that share their stories to be able to help other people. Like, and there's many other things in between it, but stories can help people grow. And so I hear, like, you've been on this journey, you have different perspectives, and you chose to take those perspectives to be able to go love on the community and help really lead the charge to make sure kids in certain school districts that wouldn't normally get fed are getting fed.
right.
And that they're taken care of. So, like, for one, you don't seem like you slow down much very all, but I hope you're celebrating in some of the wins that you've built over this last few years, because it's really remarkable that you're still here today with that piece. And it's not even just here, you're thriving today, as we'll continue to get into. So keep doing that good work. But I want to hear your why. I don't think I forgot. Right.
I guess my why is I just fundamentally believe there's no such thing as other people's kids. Like, that's not a thing, because those kids that are in my kids' class, like, we all just kind of belong together. And my larger family, and there's a theme throughout it. And I think that's something that we've always shared over the last decade, kind of pitching in with each other. Within our social circles, we all kind of belong to each other. Yeah. And the idea of taking that value a little bit bigger and applying it in new ways, but also we don't sit easily or well. And I think for all of us, the pandemic forced us into, like, a lot of our purpose is defined by a job or a relationship or how we stay busy. And I think we were all in some ways forced to kind of push back of like, well, now what do I do? Like, I'm not working in real estate. That's
how you thought real estate was going to just die and crash.
Right. Which it did quite the opposite. But, in those early days, it's like, oh, well, we have to find something to do. And I think one of the other big things is I've always been about empowering youth and youth voice. And when I was looking back on our TikTok account, which everything we're doing, there's always kids in the picture. There's always kids moving. In fact, usually there's more kids doing the work than adults in the room. Mm-hmm. And I think that was right off the bat, because we put our kids to work. And shout out to the Degala family who allowed their house to be taken over for a good 2 years. I mean, she's not even kidding a little bit when she said her house was taken over. Wow. It really was, truly. So they deserve a lot of credit for that sacrifice that they made. My
husband's a saint.
Yeah, he is. He's a saint. So
we saw you put in the work. I'm sure you saw how passionate you were about it. It's like, I can't be the guy that gets in the way of this because of just space, right?
Like, I'm going to stop you for 1 second. Mm-hmm. I said to him pretty early on, maybe like a year in, whatever. And I said to him, thanks for letting me start this whole pantry thing in my house. And he looked at me and said, you would have done it anyway. And I was like,
Fair.
yeah.
It's probably one of the reasons why he loves you.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So, yeah,
Right.
so I'm sorry for interrupting.
No,
you.
absolutely.
It's one of my favorite
But our
things.
kids, it gave our kids a sense of purpose
Oh,
and
yeah.
us a sense of purpose
Totally.
early on. So it's, maybe there's a little bit of almost selfishness in it of like, we're all looking for something to do because online school wasn't even really happening at that point.
Wasn't.
So it became, and we developed safe ways to do it. And there's a lot of great photos of us like touching through windows and with neighbors and the kids coming up and dropping stuff and, touching my kids' hands through the glass.
Through the glass, yeah.
There's some really, like in hindsight, I feel
Like in the history books type photos,
Oh,
right?
it
Yeah.
100%.
We'll look back on that. Like that was just a beautiful time.
Like, I remember when we couldn't find toilet paper and
Right.
all of these things, and we had to like touch through glass. But it really is like, I say, with my kids and husband, it's like we're social distancing. Like there's no one coming to inside of my house
Yeah.
at this time at all. So it's just like, how do we do this? Just like separate and get it back out. Oh, it's the child labor, unfortunately. No, but not labor, but obviously, like
You're teaching them a good skill set
Yeah,
to
right.
love their neighbor.
Yeah,
That's
and
it's a beautiful
they
thing.
really didn't during that time, especially it's my son, gosh, we're 3 years. My son was 7 years old, 7 years old. And one time he said, he was just like, I really want one of these fruit snacks, like whatever. And I was like, they're not for you. Like we started going through these things, and as he kept going, it was, he got it. Like he, started getting it and understand.
Mhm.
And for a child that young to be like, this is for other people. We have the resources to do this for us. This is for everybody else. And to like have that spirit and everything, like, you see it immediately.
Yeah.
It was just absolutely amazing.
It's the power in togetherness. It's the power in
Yeah.
like, let's support each other and help each other. Like you talk about your family, and like I've learned so much from your family.
Oh,
Like I put
gosh.
on for 2 years, all I wore was It Takes a Village sweatshirt or t-shirt. That's serious. That's all I
Yeah.
wore for 2 years. That comes from the root of like being friends with your family. When you're friends with your family, you are a part of the family.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And that's a piece of it. But to take that piece and to be able to go out and to,
Oh, yeah.
to share it with others, I have huge admiration for both of you as you just dove into love, and you didn't think about all the details. You just figured it out as you went, which as a person who does that, and as the person who has to watch the other person do that you're not going to stop. I'm kind of Yeulanda in most relationships that I'm around. You kind of were like this. What I'm hearing you say, like you kind of were the cheerleader for it, and you kind of helped it out, but you kind of help keep it together too a little bit. Like, do some of the pieces, or what was that?
I mean,
like?
my role got less and less over time
Mhm.
as, Yeulanda really forged ahead with this. Don't you think it's fair to say we thought we'd be put out of business pretty quickly?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that wasn't the
No,
goal.
the goal was not to like, oh, we're
this
gonna
Yeah.
do
is
this
not the
forever
goal at all.
Yeah,
This
it
was
was-
completely a happy accident. I
Yeah.
guess, but not the goal.
Yeah.
But eventually it
Which
became
is
clear.
cool, by the way. Like,
Right,
you
eventually-
just flowed, and like, look at you now. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
Right. But I think it's like a lot of things you do in life, whether it's parenting or whatever. You're like, eventually my goal is to put myself out of business. Like I don't
Mhm.
need, the work is complete. The work doesn't need to happen anymore. But I think as time went on, it became clear you weren't going to be out of business anytime soon. And as real estate got busier, my role lessened and your role kind of kept growing. And so did the need to then start eventually moving out of the house to
Moving out of
getting
the house.
evicted.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the move to eviction. I think definitely it was trying to take things in initially, like I said, that 2-week chunk of time that this is what we're going to do for 2 weeks and then that's going to end. But then as things kept going and things kept getting worse, people were reaching out to us through the Facebook page. And then people were also reaching out to us saying, like, I would get texts. I'm sure you got texts or whatever. It's like, my neighbor just lost their job. This is happening, like whatever. We haven't been able to pay our mortgage for 3 months. Like all of these things and stories kept happening. And the community just kept, showing up. pretty much. So it's like, as long as someone's showing up and providing these, donations of, snacks were just the first 2 weeks. After that, like we went like hygiene, feminine products, cleaning supplies, toilet paper, like, all of those things that were hand sanitizer. It's like, I say all this stuff, out loud now. And it blows me away that we couldn't find these things. Like they just weren't available. So we knew that the need was growing and happening, but not really knowing that it was going to be, we're going to be talking about it for 2 years and then saying, oh, okay.
We're going to make this a thing.
We're going to make this a thing.
Yeah.
And that was a whole, again, happy accident or, whatever. It's just like we were doing it for so long. It was 2 years in. And my husband is the one who actually said, I've worked in nonprofit for a really long time. Right. So I was like, you need to get nonprofit status so people can donate and like write it off. And I was just like, it'll never work. Like, this would never work. And he said, you're already doing it. You're doing it. Like reminder. But what happened in that moment is like, you're so close to it. Like you're so close to it, just going through the things or whatever. It's just like, oh, that would never work. That's not going to be sustainable. Like what, why? Yeah. But, now I look back at it now, like at 3.5 years, and it's like we partner with school districts and they rely on us. They rely on us for help and support and different things like that I'd never, on March 13th ever thought about like, oh, this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to provide this need. Like never.
So going through the pandemic, what did that relationship look like with the school districts? Kind of dive into that, right? Because you started all from your scratch and you connected with the school districts. Yeah. And then give us a high level overview of what it looked like getting those those connections into place, but also those systems as well.
Yeah. So I think I'm first going to say shout out to PTA, being a PTA mom. Like, it's a big deal. Right. We're a product of PTA. But because of that, I felt like I was always at the school. Like I was always at my kids' school. Like, I've been a room rep, I've been everything there. So doing that first post and having like people just show up from that, I was just like, well, they know me. I'm there all the time. So reaching out, at first to like administration and everything like that, I literally was like, I have this crazy idea. And like I said earlier, it's just saying I have this crazy idea because I know this is a need. And I know this is a need here because people are reaching out to us here, like in this district. After, like I said, after collecting enough for one district, which was like initially 25, I just started reaching out to the other districts and saying, this is what I'm doing in District 25. So I reached out to District 15 here, 15, 21, 23, 59, and 214. So we, just went across doing the same thing that we had done in District 25 with all of the other districts.
Can we question there? Like, how many kids did that help? Like it's a lot of school districts.
It is a lot of school districts. I could have a number for you. It's definitely, yeah, but I don't. Yeah. You will find out I also do not like numbers. But it's pretty significant. Yeah. A lot of our districts, say District 15, which is, Palatine, Rolling Meadows, everything, 15, 59, and 21 had a significant amount of need, like a lot more than our local, like my local school district 25. So once we got connected with them, we made standing deliveries to them that they were then dropping off weekly to these families through the school bus system. So once the, 2 weeks passed, and I think we're at week 4, the government stepped in and said, we are going to provide these meals for, the families that receive free lunch, for your reduced lunch. And it was so, at this point, there's social distance, there's masks, there's everything. Going around to these different districts and seeing how they were getting this stuff out to their families, because they didn't have a plan or a playbook or anything. They had to figure it out. And just like I was figuring out, we figured it out together. So they were like, you know what we can do with your snacks? We can put them on the buses with this food. And then the parents are going to come to the bus stop and they're going to pick up these bags of food at the bus stop, because they would do that every day for their kid anyway. So you start getting real, like, you have to get nimble. You have to get all of these things. And it was in every district was doing it different. But what I could do, because I was moving through districts, was say, oh, 15 is doing it this way, and that seems to work. 59, that works, whatever, and kind of bring that all together for them. Because at this point,
they're huge value, because they're just trying to get by.
They're just trying to get by. That's exactly what I was about to say. They're trying to get by. You don't have time to call your colleagues over, here and say, what are you doing? How are you doing this? So it was just moving throughout these different places and spaces, until the world said, oh, well, you can't drive. Like, there was a point where they completely shut us down. When that happened, the districts came to my house. So a district van would pull up to my house, and literally we would unload things into the driveway. Wow. We would unload things into the driveway, and they would load it into the van. That was our social distance. And then we would move on. So it became this, our relationship, out of necessity. But, me allowing them to know that, hey, this is what we're out here doing, but letting them know that the community is continuing to show up. So, like, don't be bashful about, like, an ask. Like, if we're having, something that, we've done lots of asks that are, just kind of like, District 59, because the story is coming to my head and that's how my brain works. District 59 reached out to me, and they were like, we have all of these families that live in an apartment complex, live in all across the board, or have to go to the laundromat. And there was a coin shortage. There's a coin shortage, right? So it's just like, right, yeah. Exactly. So we don't have any toilet paper, hand sanitizer, or coins, they basically were like, well, you said, just make any ask and we'll see what we can do, because we have a network now. I think we had initially on the Facebook page, maybe, 200 people that went to like 1,000 in a week. It grew so really fast.
I think I finished it at 10 o'clock that night.
Yeah.
I texted you like, hey, and we went to bed. Yeah. And then it was like the next morning, I think there were several hundred people. Yeah. And I was like, whoa. And then it was a few days and it was 1,000. And yeah. I think because we've been good friends for a long, long time, but we also have different circles and spheres of influence. And so as a starting point, it was like, we reach out to our friends, but then it just starts, it's
like a domino effect, right? Yeah. 6 degrees of separation. Right. I learned that over COVID time, like 6 degrees of separation in our local communities is real. Like if I meet somebody, I'll go on and look on social media, like, oh, they're connected to Rachel.
Right.
It's just, it's there.
Well, I think one thing that we can't undervalue, or why it worked, had a lot to do with, I don't know, the posts that we would make, the calls out, the sharing of your own personal story, and the ability to energize people. But that alone wouldn't have done anything. There was a desire, and I think this is just, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That community connection piece, it's as essential as food and water. And I think that is so much, what was taken out from under the rug was pulled out. All of the ways that we connect to one another were challenged by the stay-at-home order and all of that. And so we were kind of accidentally providing a way for people to be connected to something safely.
It was a community. It was a community of people helping the community.
Right.
So people's eagerness to want to belong and participate and do some good, when we were all just, because what's the alternative? You kind of sit home and overthink things. You wallow, you live in fear, and all of these things that are available to us that aren't that appealing. So if you could offer people an alternative that was appealing, and the people showed up. In amazing ways.
And still showing up, right? Today, 3 years later, they're still showing up because of the community and the hearts that are around the community. I could say that from knowing you well and getting to know you. starting beginning of the pandemic, you're building or you're getting out, like talk to us about that evolution. Like it wasn't always like the need wasn't as crazy as it was in the beginning as it evolved for you, right? Like, or it just changed.
It definitely changed. It evolved. It became more of, kind of like sustaining things, like the things with school, like with schools or whatever, like because we created those partnerships and everything like that with schools, we were able to then, like say I look at it today, like we were delivering snacks and everything like that. Eventually, like I said, the government was able to do more of that stuff, but everybody didn't have access to those things. Everybody didn't have, a means to get there or a way to get there or what have you. And so if I look at it back at, day one and then, day 380 something, which I documented like almost every day because that's what I had to do to get through it. When kids went back to school, is what I'll actually speak to. When kids went back to school, I knew those same kids, the free and reduced lunch kids, needed help or support at that point, because when schools opened, lunch wasn't available at school. Like, so there was no school lunch when they opened up because they didn't want the, kind of the eating, the cafeteria, or whatever. And it was just a safety thing. And so again, with all of those connections that we had made since the beginning, I reached out to the school districts and I said, hey, also from my experience as a kid that grew up on free lunch, those kids do not have a lunchbox, a water bottle, or anything like that. They do not have those supplies because their meal at school is coming from school. So the way I look at it is I never want any of these kids or families to have a stigma or look different than anybody else. I want the kids to be able to go to school and be, safe and secure and just go to school and be a kid.
Yeah.
And so it, again, was one of those things that I was just like, we can do something about this. And I said, I am collecting lunchboxes, all of those things that those free and reduced lunch kids don't have. We're going to collect those. So when that kid does bring lunch from home from school, they're not just sticking it in their backpack or whatever. They are just a regular kid who has a lunchbox and are, doing that. So it's just, being able to kind of step up and, fill in a need or void or whatever. I mean, again, from personal experience, but also just because I'm like, I don't want that stigma.
Well, and I think it goes back to the nimbleness. The nimbleness that, allowed us to kind of quickly scramble while other things kind of could get in motion, is that nimbleness kind of stayed with the organization before it was a nonprofit because the needs kept shifting and changing. And I think it's also important to note that this wasn't always a free and reduced lunch population issue. And I think there were a lot of people, middle-class people, who were losing their jobs, who were facing all kinds of challenges that they were not used to facing.
Right.
And they weren't people who had any practice or history reaching out for help. And I think your willingness to be kind of publicly vulnerable with your story helped reduce that stigma. Your ability to keep things very confidential and private, but be there for people in a very confidential way. And maybe it's just they need diapers. Diapers are crazy expensive.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of basic needs like that aren't so basic that you really do need. But if you're really in crisis as a family, it's kind of an honor to be able to plug those holes that just relieve a little stress in households. Because again, when households are stressed, that impacts kids negatively and it impacts everything negatively. So I think that you did a good job of making yourself available to those people who might not have reached out otherwise, which could easily get lost. And
I would say it was one of those things that I did pretty early on. I was extremely vulnerable and honest, about my life.
But that matters. But people
does.
don't do
It
that.
matters
But
so much.
that matters.
So
like
much.
Just own it, and I feel like people maybe don't want to do that for shame or whatever holds them back. But the fact is by being real, you can help that next generation. Right. You just went in and led with love. It's everything, whether it's the beginning of it or whether it's coming through it. Yeah. It's just straight up love because you've been there. Yeah. Like, imagine if we all did that. What do our communities look like? Because we all go through something in life that's not fun. That's
we've
hard.
All been picked off the floor.
Yeah,
life, right?
100%. Like it's and it's the only way I know how to lead. It is, it's just like, okay, well, here you go, and here we are. And it's because of that, like the genuine connections and, again, making people feel safe, making people say, we can trust this. We can trust this. And, there are many people that we have dropped things off, doorsteps. I drop and leave. No one ever has to see me. And that's how we did everything with, everyone. And this lady reached out to me because she saw me once, like dropping off, and she kind of ran, like whatever. And she was embarrassed. And she wrote me a message back later. And she's like, I'm so sorry. Like I ran, like I was embarrassed. And and I kind of in that, I reached back out to her and was like, never, ever. Sorry, no stigma, but also, like whenever you need it again, like you don't need to be here. You don't ever have to see me. You don't ever have to talk to me, like or whatever. But if your kid needs a size 2 diaper and I have size 2 diapers, they're yours. Yeah. Like, and that's it. And, because of that too, we were able to kind of like, make it so neighbors, and this is one of the biggest things that, I love, like we have so many people in our network that we have been able to support that want to pay it forward. Like they want to pay it forward. That's crazy. Yeah. They want to pay it forward to the next person. They want to, help their neighbors, support their neighbors. And, because of that, like, I mean, especially, like I said, everything was in my house. So like, I'm distributing, school districts are coming here or whatever. Or I could say, hey, I left a bag on my front porch for a family to come pick up. But I never wanted there to be a barrier. I never wanted that family to like not be able to come to my house. And then that food's just sitting there. I always said in my head, and I'm sure I never wrote this down, I was like, if something obvious is in my house, it's not serving who it needs to serve. Like I want it gone within like 5 days, like whatever. And that was my drive and motivation. It needs to be gone. Like it needs to constantly be flowing through and moving. But there's some beautiful stories, but there is one of a lady who lived here in District 25, which, again, moved here for the schools, to access the schools here, and had a lot of neighbors that were really suffering. They worked in like cleaning industries, or, there was a couple of that worked at, local dry cleaners or what have you. But they lost their jobs immediately on day one. As soon as you couldn't go out into someone's house, home, or office, they lost their jobs with no safety net or barriers. And so through this person accessing, or telling me that story, like I have this group of neighbors that are suffering. They are out, like they have no recourse, no, or anything. And this is just like, I mean, families, adults, little kids, whomever. And I like can't sit back for that. Right. So I was like, I did a couple of like individual deliveries, but then I was like, it would be actually easier and, kind of a more of a value add for these families if, I take my mom van over there and load it up and open the back of my mom van. And like, now we have like a little bit of a mobile pantry. So now these people are not out here, wondering where their next meal is going to come from. They can actually shop from my van, or, here's some bags, or we pre-pack some boxes or anything like that. So that one neighbor was able to then take care of 20 additional families from one person. Wow. And so, and it's, again, she was the voice of the people that did not have one. She was the person out there saying like, nope, these people don't have it. They don't know how to do it. And, can you help? And I was just like, again, I'll figure it out. Like, we're going to figure it out. And
because it's the right thing to do. You don't need an answer, but that there's a way to be able to figure it out. Right?
And and if that is, driving my car up here and, figuring it out, that's what I'm going to do. Because Respect. It like, no is not, boundaries and never have any. So I this is constant, right?
That's a whole podcast.
Right, yeah, right.
We will not be your expert.
Right. Round table on boundaries.
No.
Once and again, this specific apartment complex and this story that I'm talking about, there are 15 more, in town that also, you just don't see them when you don't have to. So these are places that, you drive by every day, you don't see it, you don't live there, no big deal. But then as I, get connected, or we get connected with these families, we go in there and I was like, hey, I've never been here. And I'd never been here. But B, it looks like I just drove out of Arlington Heights. This doesn't feel like Arlington Heights anymore. And so in my head, what I started trying to do is tell those stories and humanizing those people that no one else saw.
Yeah, that's it. That's absolutely, the world needs more of that. Like overall, like you talked about connection earlier, and like we're all connected in some way here in our local community. So like to be able to see that, and to be able to see that firsthand, I think is, and to be able to act on it, and you didn't put up like, you had boundaries. You were like, love is going to overcome these boundaries. Right. Like I feel the energy from across the table.
Mm-hmm.
I truly, y'all are my type of people, and I love that. And I'm honored to be able to help bring out your story and to help be able to share. So you did a lot of work through the pandemic. You're here now. Like where y'all go? Like what's happening? What's moving behind the scenes?
Mm-hmm.
How are things changing? And where are you going?
Okay, so we're a startup nonprofit, which again, one of those things. If you think about it, you're probably like, "Yeah, I'm not going to start a nonprofit." It is a lot of work. It's a lot of work starting a business here, and then nonprofit model. The biggest reason to do that is to be eligible for board grant money and things like that.
With capital, you could do more.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing. It's like, I know that this model of what we're doing is special, and it's something that, needs to be replicated, kind of across the board, but it's just, getting there, obviously. So starting the nonprofit, what that allowed us to do is, go in, pitch different businesses for things, but it also, because of the growth model that I have in my head, no, I'm just kidding. It's all written down.
Sure.
It's all written down somewhere, probably on a piece of notebook paper somewhere, but we have been able to work with students and families and so well, and, for so long that going into the schools is second nature. So last year, getting something permanent in schools was the goal. And we were able to do that with our first district, which is District 21. So started a program called Neighbors Care. So Neighbors Care closets, pretty much, we can call them a pantry, but pantries that students and families have access to within our schools. So we started District 25, so 9 schools. That they can access food and snacks, at the basic level, but also those hygiene products. And, sometimes it's like cleaning products, or, here's some warm socks, that, can be accessed by the students, or the mom can call in and say something. I come from a family of teachers. And so one of my biggest things with that is I know how much teachers reach into their pockets. They're always reaching into their pockets for things, school supplies, or, hey, I have some granola bars in my class, or a bag of apples, or anything like that. So that was literally like the catalyst for that, saying like, let's get into the schools. Let's take this off of teachers so they don't have to do these things. And also the school can provide a snack. So kids in grade school can go and get a snack, or they bring a snack into school. But if you don't have that snack at home, the school will give you a snack, but every single time it's the same snack. So you're accessing the free snack as a student, which, they get something to eat, but also that's one of those stigma things. Sometimes kids can be cruel and I never want a kid to have that on their back, like, oh, they got the free snack or something like that. They're there, they're great.
It impacts how they're going to go learn. It's everything, because then they're in their head, right?
Yeah, they're in their head. It's a social thing that, it's hard. So I think the biggest thing is when I was growing up again, because again, everything comes back to that. So Neighbors Care ends up being 2. We're in grade schools, like I said, in District 25. We deliver items for currently District 21 and District 59 to pantries that they currently have. But we also started a pantry at Wheeling High School. And that was directly because as a high school student, again, the high school student that receives free lunch, what I decided to do instead of accessing that free lunch, because that would have been like social, killed me socially at this time. We had a lunch card. Everybody would have known, like all that stuff. What I decided to do instead of accessing that lunch was not eat. So in high school, if I didn't have, I had a little tiny part-time job or whatever, but if I didn't have the funds to pay for lunch or, bring something from home, my alternative was not eating. And, if you can imagine, like, I think about me now and how hangry I get when I don't eat, like, I probably learned nothing,
The audience doesn't see it. We have candy bars right here just in case. Just in case.
Right. So, that's moving on to the growth thing, is having those kind of supports and safety nets for kids across the board, but also for high school students, because socially it becomes, a lot more pressure and everything. So at Wheeling High School, any student that, doesn't have, the means, or whomever who is identified by, social worker, resource officer, anybody, the principal, students can go into just the student resource, or not the student resource center, student services, walk into an office and access these snacks that we have in the office. They don't have to, with those stigma, none of their friends knows that they're doing it or anything.
It's so important. I feel like I grew up and I feel like I see both sides of the tracks. I've been blessed to see that. And I was a kid that probably could have got those snacks or those things, but you don't go or you don't get help because you don't feel right inside as a kid. Right. As an adult, you don't feel right inside either. Right. But as a kid, we could help solve that as people who made it through this, and that we could help those kids not have to feel those emotions and those things. So keep going.
No, I've been out of high school for a long time, but that's a memory. That's core memories that I have about those moments, and not
they'll be with you forever. Yes.
Exactly. And so what I've tried to do this entire time is look at it from the lens that I live in now. Like, I live in, a great area and all that stuff or whatever. And my kids don't have to worry about that, but I'm always going to be that little girl in high school that did not have anything to eat because of that. Like, I will do this across the board. So that was a long question, like a long answer, really, to say, having those things in the schools for people to access, for kids to access. If a mom calls up and they are having struggles at home, at Wheeling High School in District 21, what they can do is call the school and they will send a bag of food home. And that's something that we have done and worked for, to put those items in the school. So I want that to be a thing. Like, I want that to be available across the board. And so that is how my mind works for it. And it's like, oh, well, it's just easy. One of the things you said, just like, have you ever stopped and thought about what you've done? Rachael has stopped me a million times to remind me or to say that, like, have you stopped and thought about what you've done? I'm like, no, because there's more to do. Like, there's so much more. And
but to sit back and to reflect.
Jay, I try. I do my best.
To me, like,
stubborn.
We'll make you do it right here. You're surrounded now. So
I'm kind of stuck over here.
We're going off script right now, but that's okay. So you're going through this, and you're not saying no. You're just showing love throughout the community. You're continuing to build, and no is not in. I'm not even going to say no to you. It's a bad word. As you look back now, what you're a woman of gratitude. I could see it and I could feel it. What is the gratitude that you have for what you've just gone through? What are you feeling inside?
I think the biggest thing is how I grew up. Like, we didn't have a lot of means. I would say we definitely did not have a lot of means, but I grew up with the best neighbors and the best community. And right. Yeah.
Right. I know.
I'll just stop now. No, it is. I knew who safety and security neighbor was. I knew who had the best cakes. I knew who had like all these things. And that's where I grew up. That's my community. And none of us had a lot of means that, but we all pulled it together. It was a part of life that, we're communal. Like, that's why, we get along so well and everything like that. We take care of each other. And, I am grateful for the point in my life where I could see people showing up and taking care of each other again, because you lose all of that. I think one of the things, the pandemic was awful. Being through that was awful. But one of the things is like, I started saying is like, I'm tired of social media, all this stuff, whatever. But we just use social media for good.
Yeah,
We used it for good.
Like couldn't have done it without social media.
Yeah. And I'm grateful that, I never think like that's how I live. I never think anyone is watching or paying attention ever. So, there are times where, the bin would be empty for a week or something like that. And I'm like, okay, like hopefully like, something happens. And, I'm grateful that there are people listening, are we, huge and cash flush? No, but there are people listening, and it's enough. It's enough that we can keep doing these little things and ticking forward and trying to like affect more change and affect more people. And, I always say, like, just make other people feel good. That's it. Like, you belong, you're here, you feel good. Like, that's it.
It sounds so simple, yet it's so hard.
It is very hard.
But we have growing and we have healing to do as a society to be able to get there, right? Like, social media, it's still in the infancy stage. Like, if you look back on history, we're still in first 20 years of this. That's nothing. So you've seen it used as bad. We'll continue to see it used as bad. But guess what is stronger than bad? And that's good. So it's amplifying voices like yours, and it's amplifying other people that are doing other things in the community, because there's so many. I can't say so many people like you, because you are unique, but there's so many people that want to give and to do good in the community. Like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And then let's use these systems of podcasting and other video stuff to not go in and connect in your community like you all did, but to like make an impact in the community. Like, we just learned the world's a hot mess. Let's fix that now. Like, so our kids and their kids don't have to deal with the same crap that we did,
Right. I think of that anecdote of the guy standing on the beach and he's picking up the sea life that's washed on the shore and he's chucking it back in. Just thinking someone goes up like, what are you doing? Like, what's the point? And he was like, well, it matters to that one.
Yes.
So just keep throwing the stuff back in the ocean, because that little bit, even if the need feels overwhelming and you'll never be put out of business, every little thing does matter.
It could evolve and it could change, but to lead with love and to lead with what I think is truly admirable. I am I'm honored to be here and being able to help bring out your story. I wish we could continue talking, so maybe we could do a part 2 someday. I don't know. Let's do that. You never know. We're not going anywhere, but I am grateful and inspired by just this process of getting to know her better, but from all the good things that you said, and just be along this journey with you. I've seen this evolve over the last 3 years.
Yeah, we've gone a lot of chapters together.
we have not that many. We're not that old. Come on. But it's beautiful. What y'all are doing. So keep kicking butt and keep loving on the community and doing your thing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody, one last thing, and then I guess I could have ended there, but where should people follow you?
So we have a website. It's goodneighborsnetwork.org. .org. So all just together. We also have Facebook presence, of course, in Instagram and TikTok. So it is at Good Neighbors Network across all of those platforms, LinkedIn, all the things. But, we're available. We have a community forum, all these things. But, as time goes on, we're just going to be, out there more. But again, I think Rachel's thing, as I always say with her story of throwing it back in, it's like boil the cup of water, we're trying to do that the ocean is big. We're, just doing it one cup of water at a
Couple at a
time.
time.
So we're definitely, I always say, I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. Like it's this, my heels are dug in. Our heels are dug in. So
with a really hyper local focus.
yeah.
Like Love Local. We just, yeah.
There's a lot of synergies.
We're cut from the
here.
same cloth.
Yeah. No.
I could go on and on.
No.
I won't for the sake of time.
No, but this has been amazing. So
Yeah.
thanks so much
Yes,
also
thanks
for
so
having
much.
us.
It's an honor, my friends, and
Oh my
I look
gosh.
forward to the next times, and I look forward to seeing the evolution of what y'all are doing. My friends, imagine if we all took our life's perspective and try to do good with it from the things that we struggle with. I think our world would be a better place. And to Rachel's point, we could even be stronger locally if we are able to do that, to be able to love on our neighbor. Brenda, all this was just from a woman that took her story and struggles and saw a need in the community and didn't take no for an answer. Each of us has that in us. So my quest to you is go searching for that and with your way to be able to give back and to be able to do good. And in the meantime, follow a Good Neighbors Network where she said it. We'll put some stuff in the copy as well, and just follow them on their journey as they continue to show love to our kids and our families in our local areas that need it. But as always, my friends, support local, love local, and we're stronger together. Peace.